It's funny with Asian Man. A lot of people think Asian Man's way bigger than it is just because of the releases we put out. Asian Man is just me. I do everything at Asian Man. I am A&R. I am mail order. I do manufacturing, quality control. So I consider Asian Man my main gig. This is how I feed my family. And I work hard at it, but it's fun. It's fun work. But because it's my own business, if it gets too busy, I can just turn the store off, and I'll do that. I'll say under maintenance, just so I can catch up with the orders. And then once I catch up, I'll put it back up.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Record Process. This week, we are joined by multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and the founder of Asian Man Records, Mr. Mike Park. Since 1996, Mike has run Asian Man Records out of his garage in California, becoming somewhat of a DIY institution in the punk rock and ska communities. The label has even served as a small breeding ground for bands like Less Than Jake, Alkaline Trio, and the Lawrence Arms to grow into what they've become. While helping so many artists release their music over the years, Mike has also maintained an incredibly prolific career as a songwriter himself, including his work with a project called the Bruce Lee Band. We recently had time to sit down with Mike to talk through the process of making the band's newest record, One Step Forward, Two Steps Back, which was released earlier this year and features some really amazing collaborators, some of whom you may even recognize from season 2 of The Record Process. We cover so much creative ground on this one, not only about the writing and recording of the album, but about Mike's greater philosophy as an artist and activist. I know you are going to love it, so here we go. When the world shut down in 2020, musicians and producers everywhere were forced to re-examine and reimagine their creative process. Without the possibility of in-person studio collaboration, the future of music production was anything but certain. But as the old saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. And for those professionals who were determined to never compromise on the quality of their audio, the world-class engineers at Audio Movers established that way. By combining the HD streaming of lossless multi-channel audio straight from your DAW with the unique ability to adjust latency and bitrate, Listen To stands as the solution to unlocking global creativity in music production. Its power has been felt on Grammy Award-winning albums and on over 85% of all modern Abbey Road studio sessions. So stop letting your physical location dictate the quality of your work and the projects within your reach. For a free trial, just follow the link in our show notes and use the code PROCESS to receive 10% off the first year of your membership. Listen, if you're an artist or musician still struggling to find a better way to distribute and promote your music, and you haven't checked out DistroKid yet, then that needs to jump straight to the top of your to-do list. We are proud to have them back with us for another season of The Record Process, primarily because they, just like us, are committed to empowering and supporting independent artists like you. DistroKid is by far the most affordable service for distributing your music to all digital streaming platforms, and it comes with a bunch of tools to help you elevate your career in a ton of crucial ways. DistroKid not only allows you to spread your music across the streaming ecosystem, regardless of what platform might be top of your focus right now, but it also helps you share your story with labels using their unique upstream tool. You can engage with your fan base using DistroKid's text messaging feature, and they'll even help you create unique lyric videos that can help you promote your music better online. As a Record Process listener, you can get 30% off of your first year's membership just by heading to the show notes and signing up using our affiliate link there. And remember, we always love hearing what you're working on and how tools like DistroKid are helping you create some incredible moments for your fan base. So please don't hesitate to share them with us. And now, here's our interview. Mike Park, welcome to The Record Process, sir. This is a joy to have you. You were quite a prolific man of many talents. Really doesn't even sell it quite as well as I wish it did. But songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, label owner. We're so happy to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to dish dirt. I'm ready to go crazy. and make people feel very uncomfortable. How's that sound?
That sounds incredible, and also extremely foreboding and maybe terrifying, depending on who's going to be made uncomfortable. But you know what? This is, after all, the record process, and part of that is kind of going out of your comfort zone. So I think we got to lean into that spirit. Would you not agree, Tom?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right. The reason that you are here at this time and place specifically is because we wanted to chat with you a little bit about the new record, One Step Forward, Two Steps Back, that you are responsible for by way of the Bruce Lee Band. What can you tell us about that? Why are you so excited about this new record, Mike?
I think anytime you put out music, you're going to be excited about it. And so this is no different. I do believe as I get older, I feel like I'm writing better songs. I feel like these are the best songs. I keep writing, at least in my mind. Other people could be thinking, God, this is horrible. But I feel like I'm putting out my best stuff, and it's exciting to share it with those who are willing to listen.
Oh man. Well, yes, we hope that you are excited about it. We're actually just talking about this with a new Wonder Years record on the horizon, and saying, well, you know, why'd you make it? It's like, well, I think to a certain degree, you hope that we all are chasing that carrot, right? Thinking that we're making our best work, and at least using the tools that we've learned along the way to do that. So, yeah, it would be a little weird if I got any other answer from a man in your position other than I think I'm doing my best work, right? You put a lot of time into this. I mean, it bears mentioning that if for some reason anybody that's listening to this is not familiar with your extremely long catalog, Mike, I have to ask, because even just, going back and doing the read through on the history and all the bands and collaborations you've been a part of. Dude, if you had to guess, how many songs do you think you've either written or had a hand in putting together over your career? I mean, if you could even gauge it, because I was like, man, there's so many bands and such, I mean, even on the label end of things, right? You've been such an incredible creative partner to so many awesome artists. We're obviously going to link out to the whole Asian Man catalog and everything, of that nature as well in the show notes here. So to get a taste of that, but what do you think? If you had to venture a guess? Actually,
I just looked recently at my publishing because I was curious.
Okay.
And I think it was like over 300 songs, like 333, something like around then. I had a few years there where I'm trying to think if it was the late 90s or early 2000s where I was writing songs for Japanese bands. And so I was just writing like crazy. And so a lot of music I've written for other artists too. Not just for my own projects.
Right. I mean, that's a healthy amount of songs. That's a lot. That's a lot of words. That's a lot of notes, right? That's a lot of stories.
A lot of gibberish too.
Hey, we'll be honest. Maybe there's one or two nuggets of fluff in there, to sell the story, to build a bridge. What do you think the number one difference is? Because that's an interesting thing. Because we have producers on the show, we have artists, we have songwriters such as yourself. But you, like I mentioned, because your unique experiences and what you've done with the label and in so many bands and so many projects with a ton of other incredible players and songwriters and musicians. What do you think the main difference is for you, writing songs for yourself with Bruce Lee Band versus maybe writing for some of those other artists and collaborating on their music? Does it share that similar like internal drive or ethos, or how do you go about that? Just to take a quick detour away from the Bruce Lee Band.
If I'm writing for somebody else, I'm definitely thinking, how can I get this song to be their most popular song? And also, I'm just going to admit it straight up, man. A lot of times I can borrow from songs I've written in the past that I've sung. And if someone else is singing them, no one can tell. But I try to write, a good hook. And especially for the bands in Japan, it was just like, it was really easy. And a lot of times I was seeing how fast I could write the song. Like I'd be like, okay, I'd go to their studio to try to teach them a song. And I hadn't even written it yet. I'm like, hey, just give me a couple minutes. And they'd wait outside. I'm like, okay, I got to write a song right now. Just as a weird, addiction I had of how fast can I write this thing? And I wrote songs like within minutes and said, all right, come back in. And then even as I was teaching them, like, adding to it. I'm like, okay, yeah, this part goes like this. And they don't speak English. I don't even speak Japanese. It's all through a translator. They don't even know. So I was just like, yes.
Oh man, Dude, that is incredible. Do you have any standout examples? Like, do you remember any of those songs? Because I would love, just for the peek behind the curtain, to even link out to one if you remember one specifically that you're like, honestly, I kind of threw this one together in a couple minutes and it just worked,
Yeah, the most popular song I wrote in that fashion was this song called Kana Simio for this band called Kamuri. And it's like, if you go into the karaoke parlors in Japan, it's all over. You can sing it in the karaoke booths. It's a trip, man.
Oh, I love that. What a testament to just let your instinct flow and just let it out and don't stumble over trying to grind it down too much, huh?
Exactly. I was just trying to, I don't know what I was doing. Part of it was humorous to me. I thought it was funny. I was like, I'm not going to come in with a song. I'm just going to pretend that I have one written and see if I can pull it off. And that was one of them. And when they started playing it, I was just laughing inside and going, oh, this sounds really good.
Go ahead, Tom. I got to take that one in for a second.
As far as like songwriter in the studio, was it just like they hired you as that? Sorry to like sidetrack. This is just so I wasn't expecting this. That's amazing. As far as like when it comes to the Bruce Lee project, was there any of that like same I'm going to call it energy that you had during those sessions? Like, was there a song that like came out in like minutes on this?
I'm not even joking.
Oh,
so
really?
This incarnation of Bruce Lee Band started in 2014. So it's me, Jeff Rosenstock, Kevin Higuchi, who's the drummer. And then we brought in Dan Podhouse from MU330 for the last few recordings. And so all the records we've put out, so we've put out 2 full lengths, 3 EPs. And every time we went in to record, we never rehearsed once before we started recording. We went straight into the studio and we'd start rehearsing and we would record as we went. And also we never spent more. I mean, this last record's the longest we spent, which was 7 days, but we pulled off that first record in 3 days. And that was like 13 songs and we never even rehearsed before. So it was a lot of that, just like, and a lot of laughing. Like, we couldn't believe we pulled it off. The drummer didn't even know he was playing on the record until that day. That's how, we'll even go that much further. Kevin Higuchi did not know he was in this band until the day we started recording, because the drummer I picked couldn't play ska. And I was like, this ain't going to work.
Based on the record that I heard, that feels like a prerequisite to play drums on this project. So that okay, got it. Well, Tom, I just have to say, Mike, we just had an incredible chat with, and I don't know if you're familiar with this artist, but a gentleman named Quentin Brock, who, it's so funny where it feels like the universe, at least today anyway, through this podcast, is telling Tom and I to stop overthinking shit. Because he actually mentioned a similar ethos in that, no, he didn't want to send the songs to his band. He demoed them, he'd write them, like lightning speed, breakneck speed, because he doesn't want to get bored with kind of pining over things and trying to round too many corners. You're saying the same thing. Both of these records are incredible. So, albeit stylistically very different in their own ways. But Mike, I love that. I mean, if you have that's what a testament to, if you have good players. And like you mentioned, you have guys like Jeff, who, for anybody that listened to Jamie Coletta's episode on season 2 of the Record Process, she talked about working with him on his record Worry. Incredible record, incredible musician and guy. And then Dan Podhest, who, you know what? I met Dan Podhest many, many moons ago on a Streetlight Manifesto tour. It was the first larger tour that Wonder Years ever opened up on. And we were all huge, well, I still am to this day, but we're all very huge ska nerds. I played trombone, and we, played, had our high school ska cover band type thing. And so that meant a lot to us to get on that tour, see players like that and everybody. And Dan was on that tour. He was opening, and I think he was doing lights and just generally being this beacon of,
I remember
dude. But this all goes to mention that you're pulling in a cast and crew that is able to think like that on the fly and just has such incredible instincts. And you're able to do it that way. You're able to do a record in 7 days. How does that make you? What are your thoughts then on when you hear people that have taken months, years to sew together a collection of like 10 songs? Do you feel like that's in some way ludicrous now, knowing how you're able to do it, or do you think it all depends on the project?
It all depends on the project. All depends on the musician. And so, God, I wish I had the luxury of recording for 2 months. Maybe one day I'll be able to do that. That would be insane. I think we get, just with this project, we get off on the time restraint. If people could see Rosenstock record, because not only is he playing bass, he's playing keys and he's playing tenor sax and baritone sax. And he's never even rehearsed on any of these instruments. And he's just going down the line of each instrument and going next part, next song. It's mind blowing. So he's making up harmony in his mind as he goes on the spot. It's crazy.
Honestly, I kind of wanted you to be like, he's playing bass, he's playing keys, he's playing sax, all at the same time. He didn't even overdub it. And I'm just like, you know what? Yeah. I'd almost buy it. I'd buy that story for $1 and I wouldn't even ask for photo proof. But yeah, man, there's such talented players, and being able to lean on people, around you that can enjoy the song, get a vision, and that you extend that trust for them to run with it. That's the only way you're going to do an entire record in 7 days, right?
Yeah. And again, this was the longest we'd ever taken. We thought, wow, we have 7 days to do this. This is what a luxury. But there's a song in particular on this record that Jeff wrote. It's called I Hate This. And Kevin had to leave. He lives in San Diego, so he was going to drive down. He had a jazz gig in the morning, like at a old retirement home. She's like, I gotta leave, guys. And we're just like, one more song. And Jeff taught him that song. I'm talking no more than 5 minutes, and we had that thing recorded. And like 2 takes, and he's like, all right, I'll see you guys. And that, I just remember that one because everyone was okay with leaving it off. Like, that's fine. We got 11 songs on the record, but I'm like, come on, let's do this. I wanted Jeff to have a song on the record.
Yeah. You're doing this record in 7 days. Where did you do it, and how did you do it?
Okay, so we recorded at this place called District Recording in San Jose. We all set up live, and we just rehearse first the song. As soon as we feel like we have the song down, we record and we punch in. So if we get the drums down, then we'd move on to the next song. But to be honest, most of their takes were really good, and the punch-ins are very limited. Are very minimal of what they had to do.
Right. So you're using the majority of that first take, like as a whole. You're retaining the overall cohesion and vibe of that, of those just band in a room style, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's like the record clearly has the vibe to it. While y'all were setting up and like had everything there, was there anything that like gear-wise that I don't want to say helped influence the sound, because the sound is y'all in the room playing, but like was there like any like pieces of like weird funky gear that was just like, yep, this is the sound of this of this track or anything like that? No,
not really. But Jeff, as a producer, he'll add little tidbits. Like, I know he saw a timbali that wasn't the studio's, just a band had left it. And so he's like, okay, I got to throw this on the record. And he just hit, it was just like, I'm on, that's it. He's all, that's it. I was like, all right, so you hear something. Some little stuff like that.
What track is the timbali on? We got to put it in the show notes now, so people got to go wait for it.
I got to look at my TikTok. I think I did a TikTok about it.
Oh, or you can just go look at Mike's TikTok. Yeah, or you can do that and to find out.
Yeah, it's the very first TikTok I ever did. So if you want to see what song Jeff is playing, go to the Asian Man Records TikTok, and it's the first song, and it says Jeff Rosenstock timbalist ?
No question mark needed. Yeah, that track's right. He also played that at the same time that he was dubbing keyboard with his feet, bass with his hands, and there was a sax in his mouth. So yeah, the other arm was playing a timbale. Oh, dude, that's awesome. See, I love that. And because it is a bit, when we talk about with a lot of the overarching themes on the show, Mike, the idea of the environment. And sometimes that comes down to the things that just happen to be there. Right. So just happenstance, band leaves that. Right. It's there. Put it on a record. Sometimes it seems silly, but maybe that little moment of levity or humor, and it inspired that TikTok, right? So it's all a part of like kind of being free with it. It's like if I had a nickel for every time we tried to convince Steve Evans that we were destined to put a vibroslap on the record somewhere, and for him to push back so vehemently across 4 records now, it's become a thing. And I feel like now when we come over, he hides the vibroslap or any sign of it, because he's just like, I can't possibly let you guys go down this road again with this bit. But I love that. And sometimes it's not even about the part as much as it is the shared connection and humor about those few minutes, right? Do you have any memories like that? I mean, I'm sure you do. I know you do across the career that you've had doing so many records, but that translates in this sometimes intangible way to the product of the record. If you were felt like y'all were slugging away in the trenches and just hating what you're doing and just grinding it out in this 9-to-5 feel, you don't get the record that you made here, and you don't get a lot of the records that live and breathe in our world that way. Do you have any, it's the company you keep, right? That's also part of the reason that you probably want to work with guys like Jeff and everybody in this band. Do you have any moments like that you felt like really set a tone and really, created a memory around the songs you were doing?
So if we're talking this particular album or just in general with this group?
Let's do a 2-parter.
There we go.
Yeah. Let's do this particular album first.
Guys, it was just an extension from those beginning days of trying to record as fast as humanly possible, just seeing us actually get better at doing it. And it's just like, wow, these guys know this style so well. So I just come in with the song structure, the chords, melody, and everyone else adds their 2 cents. I'll probably hum in horn lines, this is what that should be, or the drum beat should be a 1-drop or whatever. But for the most part, everyone's just writing their own stuff. And so the fact that they can take those simple notes that I've given to them and just create so quickly, that's the thing that's really kind of having me just kind of sit back and enjoy and just go, this is insane. especially the drummer. His feel is so good. It's insane. Always one take. And he always, I think just to because he's going to be done so quick, he's like, let's do it again. Because that's all he's doing is the drums on the record, and he wants to hang out longer.
Taking a minute here to shout out our good friends at Sheet Happens Publishing, back with us again for Season 3. They're a company that works directly with artists to create accurate and immersive tab books, vinyl, and other merch that allows fans to get one step closer to perfecting the soundtrack of their lives. As many of you may know, I had the pleasure of working side by side with them to put together a book for my band, The Wonder Years, and believe me, they are incredibly thorough and always dedicated to artist-approved accuracy in every one of their books. Every tab book comes with the accompanying guitar profiles, which allow you to jump right into playing along with all of your favorite tracks. So all you need to do is head over to sheethappenpublishing.com to check out everything they have to offer, and be sure to enter the code TRP15 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. Or you can find the link in our show notes, and again, that's promo code TRP15. Tom and I have had this. Even a couple of weeks ago, we were working with some friends of ours, Richie, who is an incredible drummer in his own right. And it's one of those guys, when you have the pleasure of being in a session, and especially for you as the songwriter here, right? What is that like to just, it just fills you with this inherent joy where you get to experience your own record coming together, and it couldn't feel further from work, right? It's kind of like I guess we'll do another. Why not? Why? You know what I mean? Maybe just in case something went screwy with the gear. But it's how could you possibly beat that? You know what I mean? Which is incredible. And I think sometimes not the experience that nowadays with the philosophy shift of, all right, that's cool, we'll fix it in post. I wonder where you weigh in on that, having put together so many records like that and seeing the power of what, some one take magicians can do to a song and to the vibe of a session when you're bringing those songs to life. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of how technology has changed, the general scope of making music and the philosophy shift in it?
Yeah, I'm very into imperfections. I like mistakes. I like hearing. That's why a lot of the old records, especially the punk records, I love the sloppiness. If we listen to the Operation Ivy record Energy, that thing is fucking sloppy, but it's so good. And if that thing was perfect, it would be no fun. Just hearing those little out of tune vocal parts, the little rhythm rushes and slowdowns. It's what makes, at least for my ears, more pleasing, just to hear something that's real. It's like, okay, obviously they recorded this. And sometimes when I hear music that's overproduced, and it just sounds too perfect, I'm like, this just doesn't sound real to me. So I like the idea of just being able to go with the flow. If there's a vocal part that's off a little bit, actually, I hate it when it's off a little bit, but I've let it go. And sometimes I'm still cringing when I hear it, but that's me. That's how I sound. I'm not perfect.
That's an incredible thing to zero in on, Mike, as a vocalist. I mean, as an instrumentalist in general, but even, as a vocalist and things like that. That's a really intimate thing. I know. I mean, how many people I had, Tom and I had to bridge that gap and get over that hurdle, just hearing our voices back, to do this show. I know some people that do podcasts or any kind of like media or journalism that have said, I've literally never listened to anything that I do. And I've been in the studio, whether it's with our singer or so many others that can do something that sounds incredible and can still feel that self-consciousness and still not have full conviction. Is there any advice or thoughts that you can come to to be okay with that and understand and find that confidence in your, if it's actual voice or voice as a musician and instrumentalist? Because a lot of people that make some of the most incredibly astounding work are not the most virtuosic players, right? They don't have the most conventionally incredible singing voice, yet the art that they make lives on for decades and decades and influences countless people. What's your journey been like for that to get to the point that you're at with this record? Or maybe just the in general performance of being you in the studio when you cut something, what does it feel like? You mentioned with the vocals, with it being a hair off or a hair out, right? And you have to listen to that. Can you speak to the feeling that you get to be like, no, I shouldn't try to redo that or change that, or I want to keep that, I want to own that mistake in that way versus, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Has that changed for you over the years?
Yeah, because I probably would have changed it, but it was Rosenstock is like, no, it's fine. And so I said, okay, you're the boss, you're producing this. So I gave him a lot of freedom on that. And I remember when we first started working, I heard just a little pitchiness. I'm like, what do you think about auto tuning? And he's like, absolutely not. He's like, I won't use auto tune. I said, okay, that ends that discussion. So it is what it is. And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
That brings up an interesting point, and kind of harkening back to what you were saying earlier with bringing in the musicians that you've brought in to record this and leaning on them and building that community through this record and through just the back catalog of what you've put out, and establishing that trust and that ethos, if you will, of just yeah, it's just really, really interesting. I love that. Even though and I always feel vocalists, it's the human voice. It's what people connect with.
It's the most personal, really. It's the most intimate detail. If you're a guitarist, sax player, drummer, you can hide behind an instrument a little bit. It's an extension of you, but there's no hiding that if you're a vocalist, right?
Yeah, and the idea that so willingly and so you had that trust with Jeff as the producer on this project that you were just like, okay, you're the man. That. It just speaks to just yourself, as well as the company you keep. So it's just really cool to see that.
Tom, you're totally right. It's about the feedback, isn't it, Mike? You know, even all these years later, it's like how many 300 plus, you know, so at this point and counting, I'm sure you have more upstairs right now that are going to come out in the future. But like even that, you know, that many down, you know, some people would be like, well, you could do everything yourself, right? But that's not the point. The point is to go find people that you can trust to tell you to leave those things and trust that instinct and that intuition. And I love that. And I love exactly what you said, Tom, what that says about you, Mike, and how wise and how much you've learned from the people that you've grown with as a musician and creator and part of that community.
To be honest, I had never worked with a producer before. I never worked with a producer up until 2014 when I started working with Jeff. He just has his mind works like nothing I've ever experienced before. So I feel like for me, I'm like, I don't have this kind of insight that he has. So I'm just going to trust him. And that's what makes it flow easier when I just give up that control and let someone else and trust someone else. It's really important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, well, like I guess speaking on more of like the back catalog, if like you started working with Jeff in 2014, the releases before, were they as quick, like the recording sessions? Like
yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I guess comparing, contrasting, was there anything like noticeably different other than you being kind of like the one behind the wheel? Like in the producing seat wise?
The big difference, I'd say, I'm trying to think of like in particular certain records. A lot of the reason for the lack of time in the studio, and I'll be super honest, is I'm cheap as fuck. I'm just like, I'm just trying to make this. I'm not trying to spend money. I'm like, good enough. It's terrible. But I can't help it. It's in my blood. I'm cheap. I'm frugal. But the sound wise, I guess it's just because there's different musicians now. Just the level of players that I'm playing with are the best I've ever played with. And so it just automatically it just sounds so, to my ears at least, it sounds so professional. I'm like, oh God, this is great. Whereas before it was like, oh, this is pretty good.
Totally.
So that's the big difference.
Yeah.
So I guess like you in particular have this, just being you, Mike Park of Bruce Lee Band, Mike Park of Asian Man Records. Where do you draw the line between like
it's a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Like if you're listening to this, picture Mike wearing, he's not, but picture Mike wearing a lot of hats because he's got a lot.
So like, where do you draw the line? Where do you trade off? Or like, is there no trade off? Are there no boundaries? It's just free flowing to and fro.
It's free flowing, but with the label, like it's funny with Asian Man. A lot of people think Asian Man's way bigger than it is just because of the releases we put out. Asian Man is just me. I do everything at Asian Man. I am A&R. I am mail order. I do manufacturing, quality control. So I consider Asian Man my main gig. This is how I feed my family. And I work hard at it, but it's fun. It's fun work. But because it's my own business, if it gets too busy, I can just turn the store off.
Yeah.
And I'll do that. I'll say it under maintenance just so I can catch up.
Totally.
With the orders. And then once I catch up, I'll put it back up.
Totally.
Now that brings up an incredible perspective that I've got to ask, Mike. So a lot of people, and especially I'll say in the overarching entertainment industry, but like specifically speaking in music and labels and artists in general, I think there's this constant idea that's kind of pushed on people that they need this insatiable hunger to continue to develop and evolve, and that everything's got to be scalable, right? And I'm sure at a certain point, the records that you've put out, Asian Man is an institution and so important to so many people in the punk and ska world, and has had such a long, rich history and lineage at this point. at some turn, you must have, thought about, do I want to bring more people in? Do I want to try to grow it, or what did that look like? And you've just said the exact opposite, that said, no, sometimes I'll just turn the store off. That seems, I'm sure, to a lot of people out there that subscribe to a much more, whether it be like capitalistic mindset of music or whatever, that seems like a crazy notion to do. If there's demand, well, then you figure out how to like, elevate the supply, right? But what you just said is incredible. And you, from what I can tell, seem to be a pretty happy and joyful guy. Was that a turning point for you? Was that a realization, or was this how you always saw, the label working for you and where you like to see it? What's the thought behind that?
Yeah, I always wanted to be under my control. I've always wanted to do mail order. Like and no diss to anybody who runs a label, but when I think about like a label like an Epitaph, Brett Gurewitz isn't doing mail order, which is no diss to him. He's doing other great things.
Yeah, I
could see Ian MacKaye doing mail order. Actually, I could see him doing it.
Yeah,
but like Fat Mike ain't doing mail order.
Yeah,
I find it therapeutic. I like going in the garage, especially when it's summer, when it's hot. And you're just kind of perspiring, listening to music or podcasts and doing mail order. I love it. And then you see someone that ordered, and you write them a little note. So when they get it, they have this little note. It's fun.
Dude, that does my heart so good. And that is why I have no doubt that's a perfect example of why you are where you're at and why there is such a wide, abounding respect for everything that you touch, Mike, because I think that little note, that little personalization, the fact that you don't lose sight of that is something I think it's very easy from like record to record. And, more people are trying to pull strings and encourage you to like push this way or expand that way. But it's those little moments where you recognize a name on a mail order list and you drop a note in there. It's like that there's this personal touch, I think, with everything you do, and the music and the record that we're talking about is no different. It's personality, and to see that come through in the label like that, and I think there's a number of lessons I think that can be learned there, but I just really appreciate you sharing the fact that, yeah, that's important to know, that you still choose to be the one that is handling all of that stuff, when it would have probably been very easy to find somebody that was willing to come on board and take that over for you at some point, I
just go by the idea that bigger isn't better. I feel like the bigger you get, the more headaches you have to deal with. And so I like being very grounded and having a good relationship with the artists too, because I want to be friends with everybody. Obviously, I can't have the same friendships with every single member because there's thousands of people at this point. But I get the satisfaction of whether you sell horribly in terms of money coming to Asian Man, or you're making me a ton of money. I still like to be your friend and do right by you. I don't pull any favorites. I mean, if you're an asshole, you're an asshole. I don't want to work with you. And I've dealt with that before too. I like being nice and having fun. And I want to work with people who are nice and like to have fun too. And I want to just run a business model that's honest, where they get paid fairly and paid well. And I feel like it's so easy. People make the business so much harder than it should be. It shouldn't be like that. It should just be like, all right. And I don't do contracts. I've never done a contract with a band. Any of these bands could leave. Alkaline Trio could leave. Bomb the Music Industry could leave. AJJ could leave. Joyce Manor could leave. But they stay, thankfully.
Well, I think we're getting a front row seat to part of the reason why so many of them do stick around, Mike. And I think you're right. I think overcomplicating, and it comes down to people knowing you and realizing that it doesn't have to be cutthroat, that everybody can lean on everybody else and build everybody up and have that back and forth, celebrate the wins for other people, even if they're not on your label. If they're a band that's doing incredible stuff and connecting with their fans and being really grounded, then sure, it's like you're not at odds. It's not a binary thing, it's not a zero sum game. And I love that, because I think that's so true. And I think we can always use more of that in everywhere. But I think that's been something that's kind of at the core of specifically, the punk rock and kind of DIY scenes that you've been, at the forefront of. I'm curious, I know also in terms of having a heart and, feeling a calling and purpose kind of greater than any one record, or yourself. I know that's an important aspect of what you do and the work that you do and who you work with. I'd love if you could speak a little bit on that and what your journey is like behind that, because I think the why behind the what is also a really important theme that I think when you come across an artist that's destined to go somewhere, I think they have that one, usually figured out or are scratching at the answer of that. And it feels like, I think you probably figured that one out a little bit, huh, Mike?
I guess.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, because I know, that you're often a very cause-driven advocate in a lot of social circles. And I'd love you to speak on how that, influences and motivates a lot of the work that you do.
Yeah. So, I want the bands to do good. And a lot of times I'm trying to talk the bands out of putting their record with me. And I was like using AJJ as an example. They were blowing up. And I was like, man, you guys need to find a bigger label that can do more for you, because there's only so much I can do. Either put it out yourself or find a different label. So I was actually calling labels for them, going, here, if you want a great opportunity, I've already built this band up. You should put this out. They ended up going with Side One and put out a couple of records, which I think helped them. But even with like Rosenstock, his first album on Side One with Worry, that was supposed to come out on Asian Man, and he was going to honor that. He said, Mike, I just got offered this deal with Side One. I already told you I'd put it out on Asian Man. Tell me what to do. And I said, put it out with them. See what happens. What I'm going to do. Let's try something different. And thank God he did. He got to work with Jamie, who I think helped elevate his career, and it just did great things for him. And so for that's exciting to me. I don't care if I missed out on the sales, or even just recently, the Dan Andriano record that just came out on Epitaph, that I paid for that recording, brought him to San Jose, got him the musicians, and the record was so good. I said, Dan, this record is so good. You should see if Epitaph wants to do it. And he's like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah. Who cares? I've made a ton of money off your other band.
Oh, dude, and that's what I say too. Is like, a lot of younger bands will ask, like how to best look at a label and what like a good fit for them is, and it's the kind of things like that where it's like, who's really going to advocate for the best career move. And that might be different for depending on each band and where they want to go. Some bands might want to stay where they are doing what they are, in the same way that you like what you've built with the label and like everything about it that you do, and don't need it to own more real estate or or things of that nature. But I think that's speaking with your heart, but also like a genuine authenticity. And that's why people are willing to gravitate towards you in that way, because they know that you're not going to bullshit them, and if you feel like something's good and there's something beyond that and they might be into it, I say, and I know Tom and I both subscribe to this philosophy as well. If someone approaches us to help with something or are in need of, whether it be production, engineering, mixing, if it's a project that I don't see a vision for or Tom doesn't see a vision for, we will always be the first ones to say, I don't think I'm your guy. Like, I might have a couple other options. If I do, I'm happy. I'll turn around and try and connect you. But I never want to take a project if I really feel like my heart's not going to be in it, or it's not something that I fully understand, in the way that they're presenting it. And I think, that speaks volumes in everything we've been talking about, in getting this new record made, in building a career in a label, all yourself. I think that's what it takes, right?
Yeah, I enjoy the friendships. It's really important. Like, I want bands, after they move to a bigger label, I want them to still ask me for advice. I really get a kick out of it. when like Joyce Manor, the singer for Joyce Manor, texts me all the time for advice. Like, yeah, do that or don't do that. That's my 2 cents. I mean, Skiba still texts me all the time for advice. I'm like, yeah, you're fucking up again.
This Blink thing, dude, and I think that also from a relationship standpoint, it shows how much of a long-term mindset you have in developing these relationships, because it's not like a short-term give and take. Those are people that still trust you, value you, and those would probably be the same people that if you ever asked for a favor or something, they'd turn around and be the first ones. And I know this is our first time speaking face to face, but I do know that I've already heard plenty of rumblings of that exact sentiment, that it was like people that would go to bat for Mike Park in a heartbeat, right? And so Tom and I are finding out real time just why, and your reputation precedes you, I guess, as they say, right? Right, Tom?
Yeah. Mike, it's really refreshing to hear that come from an actual person rather than, or like hear the genuine nature of what you're speaking about. And like, it's not something that you hear often. You hear of like this like fable in the, like there was once this guy that was like so outgoing and poured so much of themselves into their community and the music. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like we're meeting a unicorn in real life. I don't know. It's just so, I feel like, unfortunately, not normal in the industry to have that genuine care and friendship. So it's really refreshing.
Yeah, I don't understand why other labels get so upset when bands leave. It's like, what's a big deal?
Yeah,
they want to try something different, and that's why labels have so much turmoil. And you hear bands tell these horror stories about their record label deals, especially in their indie record label deals. Let's say a band goes on to that next level, and that their first records they're not getting paid for. God, the horror stories of bands getting paid just pennies on the dollar. It's disheartening. It's like, it's not fair. It's not what I want. I want success for my friends that I've made through the years, who are also my clients, I guess. But it's just not a way to do business. It's not about capitalism. It shouldn't be. You're making this, especially if we're in the Indian punk scene, we all did this because it was an art that we enjoyed and loved. And it was part of this like subculture that was not in the mainstream. And so we come from this background, and we can't forget what that background is, no matter how big we get.
Totally. And I mean, I think how we got to where we're at right now, like in this conversation, is we started off asking, like, where do you draw the lines between like Bruce Lee band and Asian man? And I feel like in a roundabout way, you like, we got there, and it's the genuine transaction between you and other artists. It feels like a second nature to you. So I can only imagine that, like, that interaction between you as the band versus you as the label is genuine, and like, it's always been that way. Of course, why wouldn't it be?
And with Bruce Lee's easy because there's no expectations either.
Yeah.
There's no tours. Like, everyone who's in the band, it's just like, we'll have a group text and like, hey, I've got a week off. What do you guys think about recording? And that'll be usually coming from Jeff because he's the busiest. And then we'll just go, yeah, let's do it. It's hard to compare Bruce Lee. I feel like that's my side project. Asian Man is my band, and Bruce Lee is a side project. Well, one of many that is fun to do.
Well, it's a pretty damn good side project, Mike. You should be pretty proud of that, I think. What a wonderful way to wrap it. Dude, this has been quite illuminating and just downright so much fun. I have no doubt everybody listening out there, you learned at least something from Mike, or at least that is our hope as always. And also, if you have not yet digested this and want a record that is full of incredibly live induced energy that will maybe never be played live, or, well, we hope that's not the case. There are no plans to play that live anytime soon, right, Mike?
You're correct.
Yeah. Well, so we'll all just keep our fingers crossed, but at least you can go ahead and skank around in your living room and find some friends and enjoy it and listen to this down, because a lot of incredible hearts and minds and souls went into it. That we are sure. But once again, Mike Park, this has been an incredible moment of time. Thank you so much, and good luck with the record and everything that I'm sure you will continue to do and touch in the future. So thanks, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are living in an era of music production where technology makes it so incredibly easy to quantize and fix and surgically remove every little imperfection that can happen during the course of a recording session. And Mike said something about halfway through this interview that I just want to reiterate. In reference to tracking vocals where there might be a few imperfections and him kind of fighting the urge to get rid of it and just letting it go. Because it's real. And even if it wasn't perfect, it's him. And that is ultimately more important. And I love that. And that's a really powerful idea I think everybody should remember. As you can probably tell from this interview with Mike, he has an incredibly vast wealth of knowledge, insight, and wisdom when it comes to the punk, ska, and indie rock communities. He's a great conversationalist and has the biggest heart, especially when it comes to talking about causes that he is passionate about. So if you want more from Mike, you can actually go check out the episode of the Brooklyn Vegan podcast that he recently appeared on. He sat down with his new favorite ska band, Catbite, for a really fun chat that I think you're going to enjoy. So cruise over there and give that one a listen. But before you do, please take a second, if you enjoyed this episode or any of the previous ones, to like, rate, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to your podcast. It really goes a long way, and it's going to help us continue to build on the momentum that we've been growing here in Season 3. And once again, thank you for joining us here on The Record Process.